sure, if I can't create a relationship with my client, it's not going to be a long lasting relationship.
And this is the number one reason why people will eventually lose clients.
Connect, have a conversation with, and just truly meet somebody where they're at, just in a person to person sense, right? Like building that relationship out of the gates. And we got into this with the whole, there's a study, and guys might look at somebody and be like, man, I just find you annoying. Girls will, what was a specific part of their brain that activates when they're not necessarily like attracted to somebody?
Oh yeah, it's basically just renders so if a woman's not attracted to a man, it stimulated the same part of the brain that basically registers inanimate objects, whereas when men see a woman as unattractive, or any partner really, then it registers as annoyance. So the same area gets triggered.
So basically a man's like, man, I need you to get the fuck out of here, and a woman's like, wow, you're a TV. Like those are the two things that basically happen.
No, because TV's at least entertaining.
You're a wall.
You're a wall. You're a lamp with a burned out bulb.
But I think you're the person who has said before, it's hard, or you might have used the word impossible, for men and women to have a relationship that is strictly platonic. See, I disagree with that.
100%.
But I'm sure there's some study you're going to cite at some point in time that says on average this shit happens, which, all right, fine. But I think in the context of our conversation, so you're a coach and you have clients, not saying you need to necessarily be attractive, but your entire all-encompassing relationship ability needs to be there. You don't necessarily be that perfect person's type, but like if I'm going to sit down and listen to you, if I'm going to sit down and have conversations with you, I'm going to trust you with some of these things that are probably a little bit weird for me to trust people with. I can't find you fucking annoying, or I can't think you're just like a goddamn lamp with a burnt out bulb. Both of those situations are not going to work when it comes to like, hey, let's have a relationship that you're going to help me solve my problems.
Yeah, I mean, the element of being persuasive, there's something in neuroscience called, or it's just cognitive distortion, which basically just means like it changes how you think and it puts you on an automatic kind of auto track. What is something called the halo effect, and that's where people that are inherently considered positive in one domain, it carries over to the other one. So if someone thinks you're smart, inherently that actually might influence their ability to think you're smart in everything. We see this a lot with medical doctors. People see that, oh my gosh, this person's an MD. They probably know so much about the body, and the motherfucker's out there writing books on nutrition. I'm not talking about you, Peter Attia, but, Paul Saladino, these guys that, may have some experience, but they're not formally educated in that domain of expertise. Not to say that they don't know anything about it, but I'm saying that their knowledge is probably a little more experiential based for the most part. And I'm just using these two. Dr. Fung was another one. I think he's the intermittent fasting guy. And they tend to have very dogmatic beliefs about that stuff. But going back to the halo effect, positively, influences how people might perceive the rest of you. So if you're attractive, you're probably going to have inherently a little more influence inside of a relational dynamic, whether it's professional or interpersonal. But we're going to leave that one alone. I'm going to leave that one alone.
Well, I think on the other side, like, all right, cool. Well, sure, if I can't create a relationship with my client, it's not going to be a long lasting relationship. Fair, that makes sense. Kind of like dating, right? Hey, if you think somebody's annoying or you relate them to a lamp, that's probably not going to be a long lasting relationship that you have going on. So how do we actually go around? How do we change certain things or certain aspects, and what are some tips and tricks? Because frankly, at the end of the day, like when we think about it, it's like, all right, well, what things can I do? What's in my control of being able to make a good relationship with somebody? And, what are some changes we can make out of this, or what can you take away? And like, all right, if there's one thing I'm going to do, here's the thing I'm going to actually go do. And I think for me, and Andrew, I think you'll be able to contribute a little bit more here than maybe I can. But the first thing that comes to mind for me is like showing true care for that person, their results, the situation that they're in, being actually empathetic and making sure that you relay that you're understanding, you're relating to the spot that they're in when they're sharing these potentially difficult things with you. Somebody showing up, hey, I really want to lose weight. Hey, I need more confidence. Hey, whatever it is, that's probably a little bit hard for them to actually admit and say out loud to some random human. So creating that relationship out of the gates is going to be driven by your willingness to understand and let that person kind of tell you who they are, what they want, why they want it, without fear of being judged.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I'm actually wearing an OPEX jacket today, but the company was founded by James Fitzgerald, one of the early CrossFit. I think he was like the first CrossFit Games winner ever, or something like that in 2007. Super sharp guy, and went down some interesting rabbit holes. But he proposed this model that, and it might exist elsewhere prior to him. It's the first time I've seen it, but it's called the trust triangle. On one, axis, you have competency. On another axis, you have caring. And then on the third axis, you have reliability. And depending upon how those things are oriented, will influence the degree that people trust you wholly. Now, I will say that after going through, some of the research and stuff that I've seen here in the last several years, I would say that there's also the element of that's what you're portraying to the client. The client's reception of that is also something important, being like how well they feel understood to piggyback off of what you were suggesting. And so all that to say, like when you think about building a relationship, and I think this very simple saying of, again, and I'm sure we said this before, no one cares what you know until they know how much you care. And I think that really is a foundational thing. But without trust, you really can't necessarily build a lot of buy-in and have that person believe you. And that means that they're going to be at the mercy of everything else in their noisy little world with, your little device and how this is telling you something is important. And then, you get fed something else in the next 2 seconds that's going to tell you something else is important. And I think at the end of the day, if they think you're dumb, they're not going to listen to you. If they think you don't care, they're not going to listen to you. If you don't reliably show up consistently, they're not going to listen to you. And if they don't feel understood, they're also not going to listen to you. So I think that those are generally pretty good elements for building trust for longevity in terms of your
relationships. When you're designing, like, a conversation that always happens is check-ins, right? So what is service delivery? And I'm designing my service delivery roadmap. Efficiency matters, right? Efficiency is absolutely something that we care about, especially when it comes to the idea of growth and scale. But efficiency at the sacrifice of the relationship is going to inhibit your ability to grow and scale. So there's a couple of components to think and keep in mind where, if you're paying really high touch concierge level coaching, say they're coaching with you, Andrew, you're going to get on a call every week for 4 hours and actually talk through everything they need to go through. That obviously costs time. But no, I'm joking. It's scheduled for 15 minutes and it usually takes about an hour.
3.5 hours.
But on the other side of that, there's connection in the conversation that happens during that call and that live interaction, where some people are very much, hey, I'm just going to bang out and send a loom every single week. And we'll actually talk live for 8 to 12 weeks, once every 8 to 12 weeks. And that is significantly more efficient. You can go in, review it, and send them a loom review or send them notes in 3 to 5 minutes instead of 30 minutes. It's costing you 10% the amount of time. Or in other words, you can get 10 times more people done in the same amount of time that Andrew might spend on a call. But how much connection is truly there? Because without two-way conversation, let's say, how many times have you read somebody's message or listened to a voice note or watched a video and misconstrued what somebody was saying or asking? You answer the question, and on the other side, it's like, oh no, I wasn't asking that. Or how many times has somebody done that to you? That's a great way to bridge a gap of connection and make it feel like you're not connected or people aren't heard. So the right thing is going to be balancing those components. I'm not saying never do one or the other. I'm not saying always do one or the other. I'm saying make sure you keep the appropriate level of connection there. Always having group calls. A group call with 5 people, you can connect pretty well to all 5. A group call with 50, I guarantee you some percentage of people are going to feel not connected to you simply because they couldn't ask a question, or they just sat and listened, or the topic at hand wasn't interesting to them. Something like that is bound to happen. So think of those pros and cons in each
Mhm.
situation. And I like to say pros and cons are just more, pros are the things that are, call it guaranteed or very likely to happen without much input. The cons are the things that you're going to actively have to manage. So you as a person want a specific goal. What is the thing in your business and your coaching kind of curriculum that you want to actively manage? If you'd rather be responsive and have conversations more frequently, but then maybe just send Loom videos every week, go for it. But if you'd rather, hey, we're not going to have a bunch of conversations and messaging throughout the week, but we're going to talk live every week for 30 minutes, do that instead. What fits you better, and kind of settle those things down so that way you're doing it, but balance it out, especially if growth and scale is
Mhm.
something you have on your mind.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's also the element of what do you want your brand to be perceived as? Do you want it to be a lower quality kind of McDonald's type of experience, which, to be frank, AI is going to put you out of a job really quickly. Those apps already exist and they're pretty robust when you think about from a just nutrition coaching perspective. Lane Norton's Carbon Diet app, like it's actually probably better just from a pure nutrition perspective than I would say probably over 90% of most coaches, unless you've gone through some of our courses. But neither here nor there. Um, but for those of you that are like, well, why is that? It's because those large language models and machine learning can effectively take in a lot more data at one time, consider it all, and then spit out something that's a lot more comprehensive based upon more holistic information than a human being can. Now, instinctively, if you have a lot of experience, you might have that edge because you're like, oh, that might not be quite the same. But I'm telling you, if you are in a low touch model, if you are in the I am going to send someone a Loom video, which at one point, I'm just going to blast her at this point, but Holly Baxter put out an ad about looking for clients. And I was like, all right, well, I'm kind of interested. She does the physique stuff. I'm not really particularly keen on that style of nutrition coaching. I don't really much care for it. But granted, disordered eating history, so I'm a little bit different. But so I inquire and we're chatting. And when I say we're chatting, I mean I'm having an email exchange with I think her executive assistant at the time. And she goes over the details. She's like, "Hey, this is what it entails. It's like once a week you'll get a 5-minute Loom check-in, and you'll get your updated macros." And I was like, "Oh, okay, like that's not really that much. What's it going to cost?" And they were like, $1,000. $1,000 a month for 20 minutes of Loom video is such a high yield of time. But then I immediately laughed into it because the perceived value just was not there. I'm like, why would I spend $1,000, $250 a week to talk to someone that's going to maybe make these tweaks? I didn't think she was competent enough to justify that price. I didn't think that there's any caring whatsoever just based upon the service delivery. And there was maybe a question mark around reliability, which frankly, I just didn't know her well enough. So because those three things were super small, the trust triangle was super small, which then didn't justify why I would make that investment. Now, had I known that, hey, she's going to talk to you 30 minutes every week and she's going to literally recreate your plan week over week and it's going to look like this, and there was a lot more transparency and it's going to be $500, obviously that would be a lower barrier of psychological resistance, meaning like it's easier to evaluate people's time. And that's the trap that I think a lot of people in the service industry get caught in. So, I mean, Steve, what's your opinion on trading time for money?
So, man, that's a weird one. Trading time for money is an
Perceived value. Yeah.
absolute thing
Yeah.
that's always going to happen. And every guru out there is like, oh, you got to stop trading time for money. Well, at a certain point in time, the only thing you have is time. So you have to trade it to get money. As you get better and grow and skills impact all those components, you can trade either less time for the same amount of money or the same time for more amount of money. And those are going to slowly grow in some version, hopefully inversely, where you can
Mm-hmm.
ideally go less time and more money. At a certain point in time, you still run out of time. So that's where the, oh, we're going to scale your business and scale this and scale that comes into play. And I'm not saying that
Yeah.
scale is bad, but a lot of times when you suck at doing like the basic thing, you're not even ready to scale. And oh, by the way, scale comes with a whole different set of problems. Like I said before, pros and cons. What do you want to actively manage
Mm-hmm.
in your business? The set of cons. a lot of times scale comes with things like, oh, let's go hire all these people and pay all these people and margins and all this stuff. And people don't want to have to manage that. You can go out and work 30 hours a week and make 15 grand a month. Do you want to work 40 hours a week, manage a team, and then make 12 grand a month? Like, why? Wait, what? I'm going to work 10 more hours, have to lead people, and make $3,000 less. I don't want to fucking do that. Well, cool, because then the only way you make more than the 15 grand is when you start selling and have a big enough team and all these components that now you have to work 45 hours a week, manage people, and then you can make 20 grand a month. And it's like, wait, I'm only making $5,000 extra, but I'm putting in 15 hours a week of more time. Well, yeah, but it's more work. Well, how do I work 30 hours a week? Oh, well, now you have to work hard enough to get your business doing $100,000 a month, hire enough people and infrastructure, and now you can make $20,000 a month and only work 30 hours. It's like, wait, so I have to build my business and all these things to only make $5,000 extra to pay all this infrastructure? And that's how I get back to working 30 hours? Yeah. So time for money is just a thing. It depends on how you're going to deploy it. The sexiness is, oh, I can get no time for a lot of money. And I'm not saying it's impossible, but it is something that is almost always going to take some form of something. And maybe you're not actively managing it with brain and time, but you're going to have to manage it with money and having high kind of A players on your team to do that. So the time for money thing is great because you're always trading time for money. It's just how you want to do it and how you want to spend your time. Don't avoid it. It's just part of the process.
Yeah. You know, when we talk about losing clients, I mean, at the end of the day, it's because people are kind of caught in this 1 foot in, 1 foot out paradigm that, you know, I'm really good at what I do. I've built a business for myself that generates enough to pay the bills. And now I'm still caught in that 1 foot of the service delivery, while at the same time trying to play the other foot as the business owner, which is really responsible for growth and scale, and obviously taking the thing that's going really well and building that out. The same way that when we think about musical artists, I mean, or comedians, even the first couple times that they go do a stand-up show, like there's no one in the room, no one barely laughs. And then, you know, eventually they start doing bigger venues, which require lighting. Now there's a crew that's involved. Now, basically the thing that still is the core offering, which is the joke sets, the hour of time, that becomes significantly more important as these other supporting elements get dropped onto it. And we've done a 3-part series on automations. And so if you are one of those people that feel like you're drowning, which will happen, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. You have one of two things that can happen that's going to cause you to lose a couple clients, basically consolidate your service offering. But you can go hire people to help you scale, or thumbs up, or you can use the tech stacks and you can use different automation sequences and different service delivery hacks, if you will, that just take a lot of the administrative stuff off of your plate and allow you to continue to be the comedian that's playing the show, running the joke set. And now all of a sudden you get to continue to do that. If you don't like doing that, then exactly what Steve said, you're going to have to outsource the things that you just don't really much care for. But if you haven't listened to those things, you know, go back. I think it's like 3 or 4 episodes ago. It's really great.
So I was actually having a conversation with a friend this morning, and he's part of a franchise system. And there's this book that I love, and I'll get to the point of why I'm talking about this, called Profitable Partnerships. And the general idea of the book is around franchising and the life cycle of the relationship between franchisors and franchisees. Really quick, high level. Hey, I'm going to give you a blueprint of how to go run a business. You're going to give me a percentage of your revenue every single month in exchange. And then we're just going to keep this relationship ongoing. As you can imagine, when you don't know anything, the blueprint is perceived really high valuable, right? Like really high value. You'll pay your 10% and it's great and all the components. At a certain point in time, you understand the blueprint. You get it. You show up, you do the thing. And when you hit that point in time, we're like, man, I know this. I get it. I understand. Now all of a sudden perceived value starts to dip down. But guess what? The expense stays the same. If potentially doesn't increase because your business is technically increasing and doing more, right? So the dollar amount, the same percentage of a bigger dollars of a big a dollar amount is now increasing. So over time, you start to build this like jadedness towards that franchisor because, like, oh, well, I know how to do it. Your clients, in a similar sense, like if you don't continue to pour into them, provide other value, increase that value proposition, eventually get that feeling of, I know how to do this. What else is here? And,
Mhm.
Andrew, you say it often, you shouldn't look to necessarily have a client that's going to be coached by you for 10 years because chances are your skill set and the relationship currency when it comes to value exchange isn't going to always keep up with that thing down the road. You have really high
Mhm.
net worth clients. It's not about the money. It's all these things. Like there's cases that it absolutely doesn't matter.
Mhm.
And this isn't to say that you don't have one client
Yeah.
that's been with you since the beginning when you were just in the garage and, oh, I got this one person. Like yeah, we all have that one person. So like, don't fucking bring that person up. All right. But on average, things like that, value starts to separate. The other thing that happens when we think about you as a business owner, you spending time, let's say you're sitting there and you're responding, people are reaching out on whatever, Instagram, they're DMing you and saying, hey, what's going on? And you're messaging all these people. You're super excited to message these people. Well, guess what? After 2 years of doing that, or when you're busy and you're tired, eventually, like, man, the value of this action fucking sucks. I don't want to do it anymore. And you start to hate doing that. So, a couple of options like, oh, well, I don't want to do it anymore. So you stop doing it. And then all of a sudden you run out of new clients like, shit, I didn't grow. What's going on? Well, you stop doing the thing. Okay. Well, let me put a system in place, automation. It's not bad, but it's automation. It's a robot. It's doing whatever you programmed it to do within the capabilities that it has. Or you could
Mhm.
hire a person. Both of those cost money. The person probably costs more money every month, but those are a way to do those things. Needless to say, when you were doing it all by yourself, you were keeping all the money. So you're either making less money because you don't do it at all, you're spending on software that's kind of okay, but it could have been better, or you're spending on a human that's probably still not as good
Mhm.
as you, but they're better than the software and it's better than not doing it at all. So either way, it's going to cost you money, or you have to go back to do it and it's going to cost you
Mhm.
time. And wrapping your brain around that value thing that it starts to separate, it's no longer worth what I have to pay, time or money, is the frustration that people tend to have to deal with, especially as they own a business, and they forget that
Mhm.
in those moments of time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that what you're also alluding to is the idea that there's a natural end to any life cycle. And this is where it doesn't matter if it's a tech automation. Eventually, there's going to be a competitor that comes along that either does a better job or is a cheaper option. I mean, there's a lot of different things that might get you to stop using something. When you think about some of the giants in the space, like Google, their Gmail suite has been pretty much ubiquitous, like everyone's using it. And so, because there's not as much competition, there's less, reason for people to migrate, but they use that to now sell their Gemini or their AI. And so at a certain point, now people will continue to shop those options. And this is why, as a coach, it's really important to understand that. And this is the number one reason why people will eventually lose clients, guaranteed 100% of the time, is frustration. And frustration is just unmet expectations. And expectations are a living thing that evolve day over day, hour over hour, experience over experience. And so when you think about how you can stay ahead of that curve, it's really just continuously building that trust. The fastest way to sell someone is usually going to be to demonstrate your competence, meaning that you can show them that you know what their problem is, you know how to solve it. The second way that you're going to lose that client is by not being reliable, meaning they don't feel like they know that you're going to show up and do the thing that you are being hired to do. And then the third thing is that eventually caring becomes the most important part, where people want to know that, in the relationship, you are going to have their back. And that's what makes them open to constructive criticism. If someone doesn't think you care, you should shut the fuck up and not give them any constructive criticism, because it's going to come across as antagonistic, and it's going to seem like you're very cutting and grading and like you're just trying to degrade or really reduce their experience of something. And that's a really dangerous spot, because now there's a lot of constructive criticism that you have to give clients. And again, if they don't know that you care and they don't inherently sense that you have their back, it's going to turn into something that they'll just think you're an asshole. But interesting story yesterday, and I don't take many clients, but I still have one or two here and there. And this particular client, she's really funny. She's a 52-year-old CPA executive. She owns her own company. Won't go into names, but she had been sick for about 2 weeks.
Call her
Stopped
Boberta.
tracking her food for a couple. Baberta. All right, Baberta. So Baberta's been around. Been coaching Baberta for like 4.5, 5 months now. And month one, we just had a fitness thing. Hey, let's just work out 3 times a week. Month two, let's add a little bit of nutrition stuff, see how that goes. She did both of them. Month three, tried to do a little bit of lifestyle stuff with her sleep. Seemed to do okay with it. Month four, we integrated all of them together at the same time, and she just exploded. And so then she got sick. Obviously, there's work. She runs a multiple 7, 8-figure business, and came in after being sick. And I was like, all right, let's look at your Whoop data. She hadn't worn her Whoop since she'd been sick for 2 weeks. I'm like, Melissa, there's not many things that'll get me a little irritated. That got me irritated. I was like, you just got to fucking wear the thing. It's not hard, Baberta. And so we're sitting there, and she'd been sick for 2 weeks. She'd come in and dragging ass. And I'm like, and we have a great rapport. We genuinely do really respect and care for each other as humans. And she's sitting there and she's on the Airdyne, and we do a little bit of a peak wattage test. She's just exhausted. So I'm like, all right, we're gonna have to pivot because your max output's like 20% lower. So I go grab a balloon. And the reason why this is significant is one of the first things I teach people is how to breathe and brace, so that way their spine stays stable. And so we have her doing some glute bridges with an adductor squeeze and blowing into this balloon. And she was like, Coach G, why are we doing this? This is so remedial. And I was like, well, if you want to act remedial, you're going to have to do remedial shit. And so, at the end of the day, to couch this, she was open, and we both had a good laugh about it because she didn't think I was being an asshole. She thought I genuinely had her best interest at heart. Had I done that in the first week and called someone remedial, that would have been a wildly inappropriate context. Probably would have made her feel some type of way because she's a high-powered executive that runs her own very successful company outside of there. So timing is really important also to consider when you're giving people that feedback, to minimize frustration and really keep aligned on those expectations, in my experience. But I mean, Steve, as we wrap up on the episode, like, what are your ways that you help people set the appropriate expectations so they don't get frustrated?
I think for me, it's really just having honest conversations right out of the gates within the realm and boundaries that are set by an early relationship. When I owned one of my personal training studios, this is probably back when I only had two at the time. I was still actively training a full load of clients. We were bartering. I was bartering with a neighbor business, and she was in, and she had like some back, hip, knee kind of joint pain issues. But every time doctors like, oh, just this is an issue, or tight this thing here, or strengthen that thing. You don't have any actual issue, right? X-rays, every scan she could do never showed a real issue. So we're going through, and I remember we were doing bridges while holding a med ball between her knees and just trying to keep everything engaged and going up. And she just kept on going up, and like that big arch through the back and everything. And I made some comments to the effect of, the reason we have to do this is because you're weak right here. And so she no-showed me on my next 2 sessions after that. Come to find out that because I called her weak, she got really upset with me. And I was like, called your muscles weak, especially in that specific area. Like, all this stuff went through, and we were never able to recover from that relationship because I said, oh, you're weak right here, like completely, like innocently, and everything there. So to your point, we just didn't have the relationship currency yet, and young dumb Steve had just wasn't skilled at that relationship thing. So for me, it really just comes down to what we've been talking about here, is building the trust, having a relationship, caring about them. I think the thing we didn't mention much on here is getting them the result, but I think sometimes that's also assumed. So if you have those honest conversations out of the gates, and you're just truly upfront about who you are, not in a mean way intentionally, but just like, hey, here's who we are, here's what our intentions are, here's what our goals are, here's all the things, here's how we're going to get there, you can then have those right conversations to help achieve the outcomes. Part of being honest and realistic and whatnot is knowing you can get the outcome that they're looking for and helping them get there. Sometimes what you think will happen won't happen with them. Like, it's okay. It's a body. Like, they're not going to be perfect with what they're doing on their end, just like we're not perfect. But if 90% of the time shit doesn't work out, like, how trustworthy are you and how honest of conversations are you truly having? Because that becomes a bigger problem inherently
Mhm.
that over time is going to erode it away anyways, because people are paying you to achieve an outcome. So you have to hit the outcomes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and if you trace that back, I mean, it demonstrates low competency if you don't know how to solve those problems. And that too includes your communication, which is the way that you deliver the instruction. And so, it's there's a lot of things that pour into at the end of the day, just helping people understand what it is that they're paying for and making sure that you don't get tied to the time, which is where I think inherently like the online hybrid model of coaching is going to be a little bit better than the trading time for money from the perspective of like, hey, we're going to meet 3 times a week and we're going to do this. We know that's not necessarily scalable. And at a certain point, you're going to price yourself out in order to maintain a work life balance. But we also find that the low connection or the low caring aspect of being just purely remote, sending those Loom videos is not something that's going to be tenable. And AI is going to crush you in terms of competency, which is basically what you were when you're an online coach that just sends Loom videos and little Google Sheet reviews back to people and giving them guidance that way. You're relying solely on your competency and not any bit at all on your connection. And so that's where AI is going to trump you every single time. So, if you want to make coaching great again, then that's where you're really going to have to figure out how to bridge what you know with what people um, the degree that people feel like you care about them. So those are pretty much my closing thoughts. Anything for
No,
you,
that's
Steve, as
it.
we
If you
wrap up?
found some value in this episode, go hit that like button for us, please. If you're not subscribed yet, smash that subscribe button. And if you want us to talk about any specific topics in the future, go ahead and make a comment down below so we know what to bring, what knowledge you want us to bring to you. Otherwise, we appreciate you guys, your time, and thank you for listening to Beyond the Pump, where we break down the business of fitness and nutrition.